have they got a desire to work with the brand? There needs to be an element of social listening so that you can check that they are going to be receptive to receiving the product.
If you absolutely must see specific deliverables from influencers, you then need to consider paid influencer campaigns. Just one thing to consider if you are a brand that really is promoting your sustainability efforts and everything as well, when it comes to gifting influencers, absolutely you can cut through the noise, but just be slightly mindful of how you package up those products and send them out to them. Hello, welcome back to Have You Heard, the social media podcast from us, The Social Shepherd. I'm Lucy, and today I am joined by Becci, who is our new influencer marketing manager. So welcome, Becci.
Thank you.
It's your first podcast.
Very excited to be here.
Good. I'm very excited to have you here. So today I think we wanted to kind of talk about one of the biggest learnings that we had within our influencer department over the last year, which is really just stressing the importance of relationship building with influencers and trying to treat them less as a transactional relationship and instead investing a bit more into building longer term relationships with key influencers. And one of the best opportunities to do that is through gifting.
Yes.
So wanted to invite you on today to talk a little bit more about gifting influencers, gifted campaigns, all that shebang. Tell me, what is a gifted influencer campaign? What do we mean by gifting influencers?
So a gifted influencer campaign is when a brand will send products or their service to an influencer with an on-target audience for free, in the hopes that the influencer will then create content around the product, share with their followers, and it also means that they're building up a really positive relationship with the influencer. They're gaining trust, and they might be introducing the brand to the influencer.
Nice. And thought it'd be quite helpful to talk about some of the key things that need to be considered if you're gifting influencers, and particularly if you're a brand that's really interested in working with influencers and want to just kind of test the waters, and maybe gifting is the opportunity that you think would be right for you. So thought it'd be worth sharing some of our top tips that you need to really consider, because there's lots of do's and lots of don'ts to it.
Yes.
So talk to me. What would you say are kind of some of the top things you really have to consider when you're gifting influencers?
Okay, so number one, when you are planning out a gifted influencer campaign, you need to think creatively. So the influencers that you will be targeting, they're likely being approached by lots of different brands. So you need to cut through the competition.
Yeah.
So as an absolute minimum, you need to send them a personalized note, preferably handwritten. You need to think about the display of the product, the packaging. You just need to think about how you're going to make it really special so that the influencer can't resist to post on their feed.
Exactly. Something that's going to really capture their attention. I guess kind of one thing to touch upon is often, there's a lot of discourse with influencers directly around brands who often send them these very elaborate packages.
Yes.
Which then ends up leaving them with an awful lot of packaging that they somehow have to try and recycle or dispose of. So I think just one thing to consider if you are a brand that really is promoting your sustainability efforts and everything as well, when it comes to gifting influencers, absolutely you can cut through the noise, but just be slightly mindful of how you package up those products and send them out to them, because that too can have a bit of an impact on things.
100%. And I think there's loads of really fun ways that you can be sustainable with it. So for example, you can use seed paper with a note on it, which the influencers then can plant outside. So lots of options.
Definitely.
So some other things to consider if you're planning out a gifted influencer campaign is the type of influencer that you're going to use. So I would always recommend working with micro or nano influencers, just because they're probably being approached by less brands. So there's less competition there. They're more likely to be receptive to receiving the gift for free without payment. And sometimes if you're working with a nano influencer who's really just started their career, they might be creating more content free of charge anyway. So they're looking to build up their portfolio and work with these premium brands.
Nice.
Another thing you need to consider when you're working with these micro and nano influencers is, have they got a desire to work with the brand? So have they recently mentioned on a story or a YouTube video that they really want this certain product, or that they like this certain thing? So there needs to be an element of social listening so that you can check that they are going to be receptive to receiving the product.
Definitely. And I think that's kind of a really important one to touch upon, because, you know, ultimately, if you're investing into these potential relationships, or you want to start a relationship with someone, if you notice someone's already out there talking about you and expressing an interest in working with you in some capacity, that just kind of allows you as a brand to connect with them, you know, far more easily and everything. And you're probably far more likely to see a lot more success where said influencer is already kind of showing they are quite a fan of you as a brand anyway. And it is really important when it comes to identifying those influencers that you're going to start, you know, gifting products to, or gifting a service to, whatever it might be, that you are still kind of being really thorough with your research of who they are and everything. You're not just gifting it to anyone and everyone just for the sake of it and just to kind of get your name out there. It's really important you are still kind of checking through their content and what they're posting about. You know, are they advocating for you, but are they also kind of advocating for a competitor or something? And just kind of bearing that in mind, really, to make sure, you know, you're putting that investment where it really deserves to go.
Yeah, of course. And I think, as with any influencer campaign, you always need to do your due diligence and just check that they've got a squeaky clean background.
Definitely.
So another thing to consider is the approach when you're reaching out to these influencers. So often in a paid campaign, you will directly email them. But I think with a gifted campaign, it can actually work quite well if you slide into their DMs, because it feels less transactional, it feels more relaxed. Normally in emails, you're talking about negotiations, contracts. If the influencer sees that the brand that they want to work with is in their DMs, they might be excited and more likely to pick it up. And then you also need to consider how long the campaign's going to last. So I would always recommend building a gifted campaign into a longer term strategy across different consumer points. So thinking about sending out products on perhaps Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter, Valentine's Day, just to make sure that it's spread out across the year. If you've got multiple SKUs within your brand, then it means that the influencers have the opportunity to try different products. And it also means that you're always going to be front of mind, and you can start to build that really long-term relationship. And then perhaps if the influencer is posting content with all these different gifted products that they're receiving, perhaps after the year you decide that you do want to work with them on a paid basis. And that's when the content's going to feel really authentic, and more of their followers are going to buy into what they're selling.
Definitely. And I think it's worth touching upon, you know, whilst gifting is a really beneficial brand building exercise, it is worth just touching upon some of the risks involved, or just some of the points you do just really need to, you know, carefully consider before you proceed with a gifted campaign. And I think that's a really great point to make around when it comes to gifting. If said influencer or influencers are featuring those products in a lot of their content more frequently, it therefore does lead you into a better position where you can reach out to them for more paid collaborations and everything, to have more of an authentic advocation longer term. But I think one thing that's really worth kind of bearing in mind is how you measure the success of those campaigns. So when it comes to gifting, if your wider objective is to see, you know, reach figures increase, to see link click numbers increase, you know, certain very trackable metrics that you want to kind of gain from influencers, when it comes to gifting, it can be quite tricky to measure some of those points. So how would you suggest you would measure the success of a gifted influencer collaboration or campaign?
Yeah, so as you say, it is really difficult, and you do have to use the public data that's available. You also have to make sure that you're monitoring the content that the influencer is posting once you've sent them the gifted products. And it's tricky because you might send them something one week and then 6 months later they'll show the product on their Instagram.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So once the influencer has posted,
Mm-hmm.
I'd recommend looking at what their followers are and then also looking at their engagement rates. And then you can sort of estimate how many people they're reaching. You can estimate their story views. It's a little bit finger in the air, but the main objective isn't going to be engagements or reach. The objective here is brand awareness.
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of also around like, you know, how much coverage can you expect to get with gifted influencers and things like that. And, you know, it's going to be different per industry.
Yeah.
So certain products, say like beauty, for example, you're probably far more likely to get a bit more coverage there. And you do need to consider, you know, the most likely content format influencers will be posting to will be something like Instagram stories.
Yes.
But it's more around kind of measuring how much coverage you might get with those influencers. So say you're going to gift to like 50 influencers, a particular percentage we would expect to see would share something about that product to their social channels, whether through stories, whether they do feed posts, whether they do TikToks, YouTube videos, whatever it might be. So I think that's kind of also a really important thing to consider. And I think just kind of like one final point we want to touch upon when it comes to gifted influencer campaigns is just remembering that you cannot guarantee content out of it.
Yeah.
So whilst you might set an objective or something of, you know, we want to see X% of the gifted influencers share some form of content, you cannot guarantee it. And it's really important to stress this. If you are a brand and you are gifting something to an influencer and you are telling them that you need to follow a strict brief, that you need to post a certain number of deliverables, stop what you're doing, basically. Yeah. It's a very unpopular and where you're kind of asking an influencer to create, you know, guaranteed content deliverables in exchange for free product. You're not considering the fact that time and effort goes into creating very specific content deliverables, and influencers like 99% of the time will be expecting a form of payment if you are requesting that from them. So it is really important to stress that, yes, if you are a brand, you want to gift influencers, you cannot guarantee coverage out of it. And if you are out there and you're guaranteeing coverage with gifted influencers, questionable. So yeah, it's just really worth stressing that. If you absolutely must see specific talking points mentioned through influencer content, if you absolutely must see specific deliverables from influencers, you then need to consider paid influencer campaigns whereby you are paying the influencer. However, again, the risk with that is that, you know, the influencer might not genuinely love the product. So I think that's why it's really important that you do almost consider both the approaches with all of your influencer strategies to really develop yourself as a brand through these influencers online and everything. And that's where we can very much help, where, you know, obviously we can kind of guide our clients in the right direction, you know, longer term over the years with their influencer strategies and everything. Nice. All right then. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching or engaging with our podcast, whatever channel you're listening and watching this on. And yeah, we will see you very soon.